Well,
Well.
we've come to the end of Western Week. Western Weeks.
Western Weeks.
With
This
the
is the
doubleheader.
wrap-up.
An original and a remake.
That's right.
Well, that's pretty neat.
That
Never done this
is.
before.
We have not.
Something new for the ace to do.
Something new for you.
This is going to be good. I'm excited to do this. Are you excited to do this?
I am.
It's going to be fun.
Yes, it is.
Both of these are quite good films.
They are.
And classic.
Yep.
I'm very excited.
I'm glad I chose them.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, and your sommelier of cinema, Robert Meyer Burnett. But what does that matter? What matters is this lovely creature right here. And who are you?
I am Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell, the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence, and...
Based on Charles Portis's novel that was published in 1968. So it was a very current novel when they adapted it.
Yeah.
And that was what Paramount was kind of starting to do at the time. Robert Evans, I don't know if he'd taken over the studio already, I believe. So this was that, like, kind of like with Love Story. They developed the book and the movie at the same time. They did the same thing with The Godfather. They kind of did that with this. And then we're going to look at all the way ahead to 2010.
Yes.
The Coen Brothers did, I think, a remake.
A remake.
Which is not so much a remake as it is a readaptation of the book. You know, you're not remaking a movie, you're adapting the original source material.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how similar they are to one another.
They are.
There's a couple of differences, but for the most part, there's a lot of the lines were
Even
intact.
the lines are the same.
Except the one, your favorite line was only used in one.
Yeah, because it was appropriate to the time.
Yes, and there's a lot of that. But
a lot of the good lines were still in the remake.
The Coen Brothers remake.
Yeah.
And the Coen Brothers, known for their dialogue, known for their screenwriting, the fact that they
Maybe
retained...
that's why they chose to remake it, because they loved the dialogue. I mean, there's some really great lines in both films.
Yes.
So, yeah. Should we open up our wine?
We should open up our wine. And because we're ending Western Week, we have a Coppola. We got a Coppola wine. Francis Ford Coppola. You know, Francis Ford Coppola, did he really make a Western? No, he never really did. But here is Coppola's Pinot Noir. And why don't you give me your glass, babe, and I'll pour some of this delightful wine up for you. You don't think we're going to do 2 bottles?
No, because...
Oh, come on. We've been telling everybody it's 2 bottles.
We're not really doing 2... I mean, we're doing 2 movies, but of the same thing. So I don't think we're going to go on for... What, 3 hours?
I don't know. That's false advertising. We promised we'd do a double fister.
Well, you
Cheers, by the way.
false advertised.
I didn't false advertise.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, come on. Why do you always blame me? I don't know. Why am I always the one that's...
Sorry, babe.
Na 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 na. Also a Paramount film.
Yeah, we have to do those.
So I have to start out by talking about our 1969 version. Begins with a song written by Don Black.
Yes.
The lyricist of many a Bond tune.
Oh, really?
Don Black, the lyricist of the song, and Glen Campbell, who plays La Boeuf.
Yeah. He sang?
He sang. He also co-stars in the film. And that's how the movie begins. Classic Western tableau.
Yeah, the song reminded me of like John Denver, or...
Yeah.
It was very John Denver-ish.
It kind of was. Take me home, country roads,
Yeah.
to the place I was born.
Aw.
West Virginia Mountain Mama.
He died in a plane crash.
I'll tell you, I mean, I sang Grandma's... I took Grandma's Feather Bed. I was the one that took it to the Flying Horseshoe Ranch, my summer camp in Cle Elum, Washington, where we rode horses. Many years I went to summer camp where we rode horses.
Yeah.
And when I got
too.
to be like...
I rode horses in summer camp.
Did you learn to saddle them and all that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we did too.
I was even a counselor for a couple of years.
I was a junior counselor.
Yeah.
I helped the youngins learn to ride horses.
I taught ceramics, but I rode the horses all the time.
Yeah, we didn't have ceramics.
We did.
But and we'd go on overnights, and it was great. I loved.
Yeah, so did we.
There is a Grand Dude Ranch down in Teanaway Valley. Remember we drove by it when we were going to Wenatchee?
Yes.
I pointed out, I said, this is my summer camp where deer and elk are playing right near my front door.
My summer camp was called Camp Mohaven.
Camp Mohaven. Mm-hmm. Mine was the Flying Horseshoe Ranch. Anyway, so, I mean, this movie begins, and one of the biggest differences between this film and the Coen Brothers remake is we meet our main character.
Yeah, we meet Mattie.
We meet Mattie
Ross.
We meet Mattie Ross, but in this movie, we meet Mattie at her house.
We do.
We meet her father.
Her father, yes, he's going on a trip to go and buy ponies.
Yes, and he's a very well-heeled man.
Yes.
And Mattie takes care of the
books.
The books.
And she's very bossy.
But she's very bossy, but she's very intelligent. And she's, of course, played by Kim Darby.
Yeah.
Who met, first of all, the first True Grit is full of guest stars from Star Trek.
Yeah.
Which makes, and also a cameo appearance by Wilford Brimley in the background. But what I love is you get to see Professor Crater from The Man Trap is in this movie. Mr. Hengist from Wolf in the Fold is in this movie. Kim Darby herself played Miri.
Yep.
In the episode
bonk,
Miri. Bonk bonk on the head. That's right. Bonk, bonk. No more blah blah blah.
No more blah blah blah.
No more blah blah blah. Hey Miri. They're talking to each other in those little boxes. So yes, Miri is on, and this is, of course, this is post Miri, because Miri is a first season Star Trek episode, and this came out during, I guess, the third season, or maybe after the third season ended. I'm not sure what the actual release date for this was, but it is Kim Darby.
Yes.
And it is Miri.
It's Miri.
And she did not get along with director Henry Hathaway.
Oh, really?
And Henry Hathaway had a long, long, long career in Hollywood.
She was much more than 14 when she made this. I mean, she's 14 in the film.
In the film, yeah.
But I think she was already married at that point.
Probably, but God forbid an actress play someone younger than they're supposed to be in real life. I mean, it happens all the time.
All the time.
But, Henry Hathaway was not a big fan of hers.
Why?
And they did not have a good time working
was she
together.
Difficult?
No, but Henry Hathaway did not think she was pretty enough. That was one of the reasons.
Oh.
And John Wayne protected her, and she
just like in the movie.
Yeah, and she said that it was, and I have to say, John Wayne, because of the cancel culture, found an early 1970s interview with him, but John Wayne went to bat for the screenwriter of this movie, who was blacklisted as a far leftist or something, and I don't know if she was blacklisted during the Red Scare, but he went to bat for her. So John Wayne did stick up for people of all persuasions when he needed to. Mm-hmm. So, this bad rap that he got because of one thing he said in one interview, because God forbid everybody wants to cancel one person because of one thing they said one time.
Yeah.
Or many
long,
times.
long, long
and
time
hey,
people change.
Well, it's also who is, I don't like the fact that everybody gets distilled down to one thing that they say.
Yeah. That's why you have to be careful what you say, unfortunately.
Well, no, I think that we shouldn't have to be careful what we say.
I agree, we shouldn't have to.
We should live in a society of adults, but we don't. We live in a society of entitled fuckheads. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what this show's about. So anyway, Mattie's father goes to Fort Smith. Is it Fort Smith?
I don't remember.
I think it's Fort Smith, to sell his horses, and
he's buying ponies.
He's buying pony. If he goes to
Fort Smith.
Fort Smith. Yeah, they go to Fort Smith, and at Fort Smith, that's where
he hires what's the guy's name?
Tom Chaney. Tom Chaney is a man who Mattie's father kind of took in because he needed help.
Yeah, and he hired him to help him bring the ponies.
And work around the house.
Yeah, and so he found him in a bar, and he was trying to get him to not do that, and he shot him.
Well, hang on a second. That was not a very good explanation. So they're in Fort Smith trying to do some business. Tom Chaney has gone to help Mattie's father.
Yes.
And they're... Mattie, what's his name? Mattie Smith. What's his last name?
Ross.
Mattie Ross. Mr. Ross. I haven't even had anything to drink. Mr. Ross is playing cards, and then Tom Chaney gets way too drunk in the bar.
Yeah.
Mr. Ross has to leave his card game and take Tom Chaney out.
Right.
And Tom Chaney has a gun, wants to go back into the men who dissed him and caused some trouble. And Mr. Ross is like, no, don't do that. And Tom Chaney, in a drunken stupor, blows him away.
Yeah.
Guns him down, kills him. And then Mattie and one of their farmhands.
Are we going to talk about them at the same time?
Yeah, I think we should talk about them at the same time.
Yeah.
Okay. But none of this, you don't see any of this in the Coen Brothers version.
That's right.
So all of this is from the original, but the Coen Brothers do something I think that was brilliant.
I loved it because first of all, I love when a movie is narrated. And so
don't tell anybody. Don't tell your film school professors that.
I know when I took my film class, they were so against that, and I'm like, but I love that.
Well, yeah,
probably because as a child, my favorite time in elementary school was being read to by the librarian.
Right. Well, the only reason film teachers don't like it is because voiceover narration seems it's a shortcut.
Come on, it's art. There are no shortcuts. It's an artistic expression. You do it the way that you feel you need to do it.
I agree. I mean, hey, doesn't everyone like The Shawshank Redemption?
I love narrated films. I think it's such a wonderful feeling when you're watching a film that's being narrated.
I even love it. I love narrated films where the director later reworks the movie and takes the narration out. They don't advertise for killers in a newspaper. That's me. Ex-cop. Ex-Blade Runner. Ex-killer. No, that's a sushi. That's what my ex-wife called me. Cold fish. Skin jobs.
Okay.
Anyway.
Wrong movie.
Yeah, right. What movie am I? Terrible. I don't know. What am I talking about? I cannot watch the movie Blade Runner without hearing the narration because that's the movie I watched for at least a decade before they ever showed us any other version of the film.
Okay, we're not
That's
getting into Blade.
We haven't done that yet.
No, we'll talk about that when we get to it.
So what was really great about the Coen Brothers version of the movie is it opens with a woman's narration.
Yes.
Older woman's narration.
Yep.
And there's this great shot of Mattie Ross's father dead on the ground. Frank Ross dead on the ground, and the narration is over while there's a push in, and there's just the one light from the building, illuminating his dead body. It's very stylized. It's very immediately it sets a very Coen Brothers tone. It's
the
poetic.
Mood is very different.
Mood is very different.
Two movies.
I mean, the True Grit opens with the big classic Hollywood titles, True Grit, huge writing and the music.
Even the trailer was. We're talking about the original right now. The trailer was very like 1960s kind of trailer.
Oh yeah, no, it was very much a classical. It's classical studio movie.
Yes.
Whereas the Coen Brothers bring their inimitable style to this.
Yeah.
And yet it's still, when I was watching this with you just now, I was just struck by how you didn't need any of the opening. Like the Coen Brothers, I think, made a smart choice. I think in the 60s, it was like, okay, that backstory is nice. And what was tragic was you meet her father. And he's such a good man. And you really like him. And you meet her mother. You meet Mattie's mother. You meet the family. And you see that they're truly good people.
They are.
They're truly good people, but
you also get a sense of that in the remake because of the way Mattie is and her passion to want to catch the killer.
Well, and I also think the story, it makes Mattie more of the focus. You feel Mattie much more deeply in the Coen. Because you're inside her head. You're already with her. You're completely on her side.
Yep.
And when the original, you're more outside. You're more like
you're like watching it happen.
Yeah, it's more of the omnipotent point of view.
Yeah.
And that was interesting to me. And then, of course,
I find both Matties very charming.
Yes.
The original Mattie, I felt was even more bullheaded and more strong, portrayed that way than the remake Mattie, but she's still also very strong, but she feels a little more real, the remake Mattie.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, she does feel more real. I agree with that, but only because I think because the way, it's a much more naturalistic. There's more verisimilitude because I am the viceroy of verisimilitude. But that makes sense because
you'll be proud of me. I used the word in my paper for one of my classes. My children's literature class.
You use verisimilitude in the children's literature, and how did you use the word?
Because we had to talk about Harry Potter, and I was saying how J.K. Rowling did a good job building the world of Harry Potter to the point that it had good verisimilitude.
Wow! Oh, wow! I'm so proud of you, babe.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Nicely done. And then both films. Once you see the opening of the Coen Brothers movies and this, Mattie Ross and the Mattie Ross in both movies go to Fort Smith.
Yes.
The town of Fort Smith, and both
with her the guy who works for their family.
Right, and interestingly enough, the Coen Brothers retain the fact he's a black man.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool to see in both. Mm-hmm. He's seen very fleetingly. I wonder, as I was watching this movie, I was wondering, did the Coen Brothers film a lot more of it? Like, I want to look into it and go, did they film the scene with the family, like at the beginning, and was that a decision? Was that always scripted to not be there, or did they do the voiceover wraparound as an afterthought? Like,
I don't think so, because they end with it too.
Right, but yes, they.
I would think that they wrote it that way from the start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious. I didn't look into it enough to find out. That's a question that I would have. But both films pretty much play out the stuff in Fort Smith, at least in terms of the town itself, very, very similarly. Mm-hmm. They're very similar. There's a few differences.
Very slight differences, but really they kind of the remake includes a lot of the things, maybe not in the same order,
right?
And maybe not in the same way. Like when she meets La Boeuf, it's a little different.
Well, I mean, before we get there, what I thought was interesting is they both deal with the hanging.
They do.
So you see that in Fort Smith, the marshals are bringing in people. They go after outlaws that are in Indian territory that hasn't been settled yet. It's still not owned by the United States or anything. So the marshals are going into that territory, bringing people out, and we see a hanging. The whole town turns out for it. And in both movies, 3 men are hung. Mm-hmm. But and it's pretty horrifying.
It is.
It's more horrifying in the Coen Brothers remake because
because they actually talk.
Yeah, the men being hung give their confessions. Except the Indian, the indigenous
they don't even
person.
Let him.
No, they just, and it's done very matter of factly, and they actually applaud. The townspeople applaud the hanging in the Coen Brothers movie.
Well, yeah, but in the original, everyone seems pretty happy that it happened.
Yeah, it was just interesting because, you're now, what were we? We were 41 years away. These movies are 41 years apart, so it's.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, you can see the way things are dealt with a little bit differently. Like when Mattie meets John Wayne, and in this film, John Wayne has talked about in the past how this is one of the best scripts he'd ever read. And you can see that he's kind of fighting with his John Wayne persona. John Wayne basically played the same guy in a lot of movies, except this one. He really sort of changed it up.
Which he won an award for.
He won an Academy Award for. And the what I thought was interesting is when the character of Rooster Cogburn, played by John Wayne in this movie and Jeff Bridges in the Coen Brothers film, the way they meet is very different. Mm-hmm. Like Mattie Ross has asked around and found out which,
right,
like who Rooster Cogburn is, because he's more of a ruffian. He sounds like the kind of guy she wants revenge.
She wants revenge.
She wants this man
straight up.
She wants
revenge.
This man dead. Mm-hmm. This 14-year-old girl, and she's 14 in both films.
Yep.
Well, and I have to say,
because when the I don't know who it is, the guy describes the different marshals that she could hire. She picks the one that's the ruthless one, the one that's mean, a thumper. They call him a thumper.
Yes, he's a thumper, and
in both films they call him a thumper.
Yes, he's called a thumper in both movies. But I was gonna say now our star in this movie, Hailee Steinfeld, they looked for her for a long time. This was like her first film.
Oh, really? It was?
It's a debut performance. Wait. Yeah.
I thought you said she did. Oh, her first film.
No, this is in the Coen Brothers version.
Oh yeah, right. This was her
first film, and she is marvelous.
She's amazing.
She's an incredible.
She was nominated. Did she win?
No,
no.
I don't think
she was nominated for an Academy Award for this role. Yeah, she did an amazing job.
Yeah, she got Best Actress in a Supporting Role. She was nominated. So I mean it, and again, but it's interesting to see how she navigates this and how they play it. Both films are pretty similar in that Mattie, she's shown to be very smart. Mm-hmm. She knows how to negotiate, because in both scenes we have scenes that are almost identical. The Coen Brothers movie's their version's a little shorter, when she's negotiating with the man who bought her father's horses, and he bought stuff from him. But basically she needs money to hire Rooster Cogburn. But it was interesting when Mattie first meets Rooster Cogburn, he's bringing in prisoners. So you see him bringing in prisoners.
Yes, in the original.
And in the remake, he's on the shitter. He's in an outhouse dropping a deuce.
She finds him in, yes. Yeah.
And I thought that was behind the saloon.
He's
behind the saloon. And I thought that was a really interesting, because in the original, she follows him down into the, like, where the jail cells are.
Yeah.
And they slam the door, literally slam the door in her face. But in this movie, Jeff Bridges is... She
finds him in the...
and I wonder, was that in the book? Like, was it in the book that he was on the crapper, and the Coen Brothers were like, you know what, we're going to make... Because in the movie in 1969, I don't think anyone wants to even believe that John Wayne takes a dump.
People do take a shit.
Yeah, they do. I mean... yeah,
I'm curious how it is in the book.
Yes. And it's very interesting. And so then we're introduced to... So Mattie does some negotiating and makes $300 in both movies from...
She does. She does not let down.
No. She does some fierce negotiating and gets the money so she can hire Rooster Cogburn. And they spend a lot more time with Mattie meeting and learning more about Rooster Cogburn in the original. There's a lot more time. I mean, the original film's a little longer.
Yeah, she gets to know him. He invites her over, and he lives behind a grocery store with a Chinese proprietor and
their cat, the general.
Yeah, and this is also different. Where she meets La Boeuf is a little different in both films, and the way she negotiates with Cogburn at his house, and this is where she says the line that I.
Yeah, your favorite line in the movie.
The line, well, I don't know if it's my favorite, but I kind of latched onto it because I thought it was hilarious.
And it's only in the original version.
In the original, and that's when she's at Cogburn's house, and they're playing cards, and he's drinking whiskey, and he offers her some, and she says, I will not invite the thief into my mouth to steal my brain. I thought that was hilarious.
That's a great line.
And I kept waiting for it in the remake, but no.
No. Again, maybe a little too archaic. I don't know, but there's a lot of other lines like there was lines they used in both. Like Rooster Cogburn is being described as pulling a cork.
Right.
He likes to pull a cork because, you know, and I love that kind of terminology. And
yes.
and she's got a lot of sand. Yeah. You know, and he has got a lot of sand or something. Just the terminology, and it's interesting because
it's great. It's great in both films. They include all those great lines and the wording.
Because it's something the Coen Brothers would write on their own if they hadn't, you know, and it really shows that they had no problem at all honoring both the original film and the source material by using these lines.
Yeah, it must have all come from the book because. I don't know. I feel like why would both films use the same kind of verbiage?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it is from the book, but it's really well. It's really well done. And so we meet La Boeuf, who is played by Glen Campbell in the original, and La Boeuf is played by Matt Damon in this one. And when she meets Matt Damon, she meets him outside. Matt Damon is outside on the porch of this rooming house and is smoking a pipe.
Right.
And in the original, she's at the boarding house having dinner, which is another scene that we don't see.
Yeah, you don't see that.
Because they really sort of truncate, and I see why.
Yeah, the beginning is a little...
It gets into it more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel... It still feels... the plot, once it gets rolling, is very similar.
Very similar.
The only real difference is what happens between Rooster and La Boeuf later on.
Comes in and out of the film, the remake. The original, he's there pretty much the entire time.
Right.
So that's a big difference. But a lot of the elements that are in the original are also in the remake.
Right. Right.
In different, and maybe in slightly different order, but it's all there. Just done a little differently.
Yes. Yes. But it's still, it's still done. I would have to say in the original, Rooster Cogburn is his drunkenness is played heightened. It's really played for laughs, comedy relief.
There is a lot of comedy.
A lot more comedy relief with Rooster Cogburn.
Yeah, the remake is way more serious.
Way more serious, even though he's still cantankerous and
there's still some moments of humor. It's a way more serious.
And both scenes, like, once we see a lot of the town, Mattie is told in both versions, you need to go to the courthouse tomorrow where Rooster Cogburn is testifying. Mm-hmm. And again, the scenes are almost identical.
Yes.
Where we meet Rooster Cogburn and he talks about taking down these guys and that he was backing up when he shot one, but then clearly there's shenanigans because the guy, the defense says, well, look, if you shot him here, why was he in the fire when he got backed away? So there's some questionable...
And he says the same joke about backing... When you back out, you're walking backwards.
Yeah.
In both films.
Yeah, it's almost the same dialogue.
Yeah.
And yet there's more... there's definitely more... it's also a longer scene in the original.
Is it?
Yeah, there's more... But again, it does a great job of telling us everything we need to know about Rooster Cogburn. And again, afterwards, Mattie finally confronts him right after this courtroom scene and talks to him. But again, I think that what's interesting is watching the two different performances, comparing and contrasting. How did you feel? Between Jeff Bridges and John Wayne, did you have a preference to the performances of Rooster Cogburn?
I think they were both great. They were, John Wayne, it was a little more movie kind of. You know, he was like delivering his lines and they were funny and he was goofy a little bit. And, but that's how films were made at that time. So,
right.
Jeff Bridges, like, he was great. He was great.
No, he really was. And he was less... like in the original, you're going from this incompetent boob to somebody who's really capable and knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges played it more even keeled. Like it's more.
It's true. But he gets increasingly more drunk as the film goes on.
Right, but they don't play it up that much. They talk about him pulling a cork, but you don't. Because you saw John Wayne drunk early on. See him. You see the same thing. Jeff Bridges wakes up in the Chinaman's store.
Yeah. For me, it felt like Jeff Bridges was more drunk than Wayne.
Well, it's more realistic, probably.
Yeah, especially at the end, like when he gives up, he's like, "I'm out. Go away." He's like completely drunk. He's smashed. Like he goes to sleep and doesn't even wake up in the morning. Like he's out of it.
Well, we're not there yet, though.
I'm just saying, like, we're talking about his drunkenness. Yeah.
So, and so when we meet La Boeuf, we find out that he's actually looking for...
I have a hard time saying La Boeuf.
La Boeuf. Well, isn't that French?
Because in French it's Le Boeuf.
Le Boeuf, like Shia LaBeouf. But doesn't La Boeuf make you... La Boeuf.
La Boeuf.
And it's pretty interesting because, like, well, we haven't got there yet, but so Tom Chaney, the man they're looking for in the original, is played by yet another Star Trek guest star, Jeff Corey, who you might remember from episodes like The Cloudminders. Or you've also got Josh Brolin. Josh Brolin, Thanos himself, is playing, of course, he was in No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
And Josh Brolin plays Tom Chaney. It's funny
He
because
does.
you don't know it's Josh Brolin. You've met Chaney in the original. You meet him at the beginning of the movie.
That's true.
So you've already got a taste of him, but not in the remake.
No.
So you don't know.
You don't see him until close to the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the last quarter of the film.
Which makes the when they meet Tom Chaney, it's more of a surprise in the remake.
I didn't remember that, and then when he showed up, I was like, oh, look who it is.
Yeah. And Josh Brolin plays him kind of like slow a little bit.
A little slow.
A little slow. Is she a great big fat person? Oh wait, different movie. That's a different movie.
Wow.
That's Silence of the Lambs.
He was in Silence of...
No, but he kind of sounds like James Gunn in Silence of the Lambs, the character. The way he talks.
Oh, you're right.
That's why I said, she a great big fat person. I'd fuck me.
He did sound like that.
I know.
That's creepy.
I swear to God, Josh Brolin is channeling his inner James Gunn.
Well, I thought that John Wayne was Baloo. He sounded like Baloo.
I know, Baloo from the Jungle Book.
I was like, from the Jungle Book.
No.
The animated. I was like, wait a second. Who was Baloo's voice?
Not John Wayne.
Not John Wayne.
Is this you, John Wayne? Is this me? That's another different movie. Private Joker. Yeah, we could just go on. I mean, there's so many connections in these movies. And it's just, yeah.
Okay, where were we?
Where were we? So anyway, it turns out that Chaney is now running with maybe Ned Pepper.
Right.
Has gone out with Ned Pepper, like is thrown in with Ned Pepper, and they've got like a claim to a silver mine or something.
Yeah.
And so...
And Rooster Cogburn knows Ned Pepper.
And shot him in the
his gang.
face. Yeah, knows Ned Pepper and the gang and thinks that Chaney is with them.
Yeah.
So he becomes the perfect man to have to track
Because
him.
he knows where Ned's going to go, and so he feels like he could find...
Right. And then La Boeuf, we find out, and there's the line I was surprised they retain when La Boeuf meets
I know, it's creepy.
Maddie in both movies. He goes, I thought I was going to steal a kiss, but instead...
Even though you're 14.
Even though you're 14, but instead I'm going to spank your bottom. I'm gonna spank you instead.
What? They kept those lines?
They kept those lines in
It
both
was
movies,
so
and I was
creepy.
like, you go, boys. I mean, you know that nowadays somebody watches this movie, even now, oh my gosh, do you know what they say? I mean, you've got older men threatening to kiss a girl
Well,
or
I'm
spank
sure
her
that
bare
happened
bottom.
A lot. Come on, man.
Well, it was a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. The world, that's what I love to tell all these people that get so incensed these days. I'm like, well, for most of human history, the world you lived in was not decidedly woke.
Not at all.
There's been thousands of years where you would have been set upon, and you should be lucky when you were born, lady, or man, or whatever. But
or alien.
But they retain that line.
They do.
And in the original, Glen Campbell meets her at the boarding house inside, like right after dinner. And then in the Coen Brothers movie, when Mattie wakes up, he's just sitting there in her bedroom.
Which is even more creepy.
But it seemed more like... I think Glen Campbell was a lot more creepy than Matt.
Oh, totally.
And it's not just because he was Matt Damon. Matt Damon seemed far more, I'm here for business. And he seemed a lot less of a douche.
Less creepy.
Than Glen Campbell.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really like the fact that in the original they talk about spurs. Like Maddie says,
Right.
you people from Texas, you use spurs
Yes.
on your horses. And they do make a point of showing Matt Damon's big, oversized spurs. And he's got bling. He's got those chains underneath his boots.
He's got boot bling.
He's got boot bling. I mean, that's exactly what he's got. And it's an interesting comparing and contrasting. And in the original movie, La Boeuf and Rooster Cog La Boeuf and Rooster La Boeuf, La Boeuf and Cogburn have a conversation with Mattie there, and they talk about hiring each other. We'll split it
at Cogburn's table, and they discuss it.
Right,
and that doesn't happen in the remake.
No, and then so Mattie agrees to hire John Wayne, hire Rooster Cogburn. They're going to go off and do this thing. And then Mattie wakes up and Rooster Cogburn has already left and left her a note and go home and I'll go find this guy and she takes off after them.
She does, and she gets to the ferry and they're already on the other side.
They're already on the other side, and she sees that he's working with La Boeuf.
Yeah, La Boeuf. But see, in the original, it's not like that. She follows them and they're still waiting for the ferry.
But
in the end, it's kind of the same because either way, the ferryman, the guy who does the ferry, wants to take her back to town because they say she's a runaway. He told them she was a runaway.
But then in the same, both Kim Darby and Hailee Steinfeld, they both jump in the water. They cross the river.
They take Blackie, little Blackie, into the river and swim across. Yeah.
And
was that a stunt person in both movies?
I don't know.
I can't imagine that the actors would.
Well, they do have stunt people, but they did have close-ups of their faces. I don't know if.
I don't think so. Not when they were in the water.
Well, they could also be, the close-ups could be in an area where they can actually just do those insert shots. I mean, I don't know. It's the magic of the movies.
I wouldn't want to ride on a horse that was swimming.
Well, if they were in a shallow place where the horse could just be walking and you're floating.
But like in these scenes, these scenes were amazing. I don't know how they filmed this, but the horses were actually swimming.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, they were trained horses. They get the.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you go swimming with a horse?
I would love to go swimming with a horse.
Really?
Why wouldn't I?
That would scare me.
Why?
Because, what if your foot got caught in the stirrup and the horse went on?
Well, I don't know if I'd want to go swimming with a horse that's fully saddled.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to do that. Maybe with a bridle and some rope, but not with the saddle on the horse.
Bareback, holding on to the mane.
You just said swimming with the horse. I wouldn't necessarily want to go riding into the wilderness after I'd been swimming with the horse.
Yeah, but she went into the river with the horse. The horse was swimming. It was not touching ground. It was
right,
swimming.
But she also probably, as a experienced horse person, because of the time she was living in, she probably had done that before.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that's crazy.
It was probably not her first time swimming with the horse.
Swimming with a horse on a horseback.
Mm-hmm. So then eventually they all get there, but then all three of them are together. But in the Coen Brothers remake, La Boeuf leaves. He does he bail on? Now he takes off.
Well, they get into an argument.
Yeah.
About the war, and they have the same argument in both films, but in the remake, La Boeuf is like, I'm out of here. I'm gonna go on my own. You guys do whatever you want.
You guys do what you want. And John Wayne, Rooster Cogburn, and Mattie are together. They're together, and there's a huge difference now. So they're going to go hole up. They're going to spend the night at this. I forget what they call it. There's a word for it. The place they're going to stay.
Oh, the little cabin?
Yeah.
Are we to that part already?
Yeah. Well, they're.
No. Well, wait. In both films, they spend a night just out in the open.
They do spend a night out in the open. It's true. I'm jumping ahead too far. And that's when.
So they have the fight after because it's all three of them. And, but that's not important. That's when they start bickering.
Yeah. That first night they do. He gets drunk and they bicker and they're talking.
Yeah.
Because there's not really a whole lot of plot. Oh no, you know what they do first? We're missing. They go and they find
where they two versions of it. We can't even remember
I know.
the plot.
No. They go to the place where the supply house, the place where they go. And they can get a meal, and they can get supplied, and they can get information. That's the first place that they stop.
Before they spend the night?
Yeah, they go there before they spend the night because they get their supplies.
And in the original, there is a medicine man is at that place.
Mm-hmm.
But in the remake, they don't meet the medicine man until they're in the forest.
Right.
That was a difference.
Yeah. But it's still, they still get resupplied. They still get information.
They do.
The marshal gets to check in with and in one.
Oh, they did something funny in the remake. There's two kids sitting out front, and Rooster Cogburn kicks the older kid off the what is it, the porch,
Like the railing, the porch, yeah.
and then on the way out he kicks the kid again. He kicks both kids off. I thought that was just so funny.
No, it was.
They were probably like, our version is so serious. We got to add a little like something funny.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a little bit out of character.
It was like, why is he kicking these kids? They're kids. They're little kids.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was kind of funny.
But then they're getting all this information and intel, and they eat food, and also it was in the original, Glen Campbell hurts his hand. And the doctor has to fix
that's right.
his hand.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have all this.
Yeah.
That's after they get in their argument or whatever, and
Yeah.
they fix the hand and
Yeah. So, but in the remake, they don't end up meeting the medicine man or the doctor/dentist until they're in the That was a weird scene because it was so weird.
You mean when they find the hanging man?
When they find the hanging man, and then the doctor shows up and he's wearing a bear skin with the whole head on it, and he's really, really strange. And then a native like collects the body of the hung person, and it's very strange. I don't understand that whole.
I mean, maybe
sequence.
that was something. I mean, it was really creepy. It was an interesting.
It was so
creepy.
creepy.
So basically, all of this stuff. It's. I don't know if we're doing such a great job explaining this
We
part.
are doing so bad.
It's a little murky.
We're doing so bad.
Well, because the plot. I mean, these are just incidents. You have these three characters, and there isn't like, it's not like they are going to Mordor, and on the way to Mordor they stop at Moria, and they stop at Rohan, and they stop at Gondor, and they're going, and people get split up, and they get
do not have Alzheimer's.
they get it's not like that. It's a pretty straightforward narrative. I mean, this is not a narrative where that's the long and winding road.
It's true.
I mean, the basic difference is that La Boeuf leaves them, and Rooster Cogburn and Mattie really set off into the deeps, go off into the deep end of this territory, and they split up. They basically split up, and it's Rooster Cogburn and Mattie find the hanging man. They're alone now.
They're alone.
And La Boeuf has left.
Yeah, he's out of there.
La Boeuf is gone.
He's doing his own thing.
And so what I was trying to get to is that they're going to go stay overnight at this cabin, this place it's there for travelers to stay in.
Right, and in the original,
all three were together.
They were together, and they were told to, or Rooster knew about the place and was like, "Let's spend the night there." But in the remake, it's the medicine man they find in the woods that's like, "Oh, there's this dugout place by the river."
Yeah, that's what the dugout. That's what it was called. Yeah, go stay in the dugout by the river.
It's really a cabin.
Yeah, but they call it that, whatever. Yeah, well, it's like a dugout into the side of the hill, and they've built a cabin over it. But so that's a huge difference. So in this sequence, which is very different in both movies, in the original sequence, in the original movie, all three of them, La Boeuf, Mattie, and Rooster Cogburn, go to this thing.
They do.
And when they get there, they find people inside it already.
Two guys, yeah.
And one of them in the original is Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper.
Dennis Hopper is one of these guys.
And he's got a man bun.
He's got a man bun, and they have a plan. They're going to smoke him out. They're going to smoke these guys out. Yeah. They shoot Dennis Hopper.
La Boeuf goes on the roof and puts the coat over the
chimney, so the smoke. They literally smoke them out.
It's Rooster that is going to shoot them when they come out. But in the remake, it's Mattie who's up on the roof, and they even take the time to have one of the guys in the cabin realize there's somebody on the roof smoking us out, and they shoot, and it almost hits her.
Yeah, no, it almost hits
Which
her.
I thought in the original, like, wouldn't they try to shoot whoever's on the roof? So they did think of that when they remade it.
Yes, but the difference is it's now in the original you have two men against whoever's in the cabin and Mattie who's been taken out of harm's way.
Right.
But in the remake, because the story is more Mattie's told from her point of view,
yes,
they've gotten rid of La Boeuf for this scene, so it's
yeah.
only Mattie and Rooster Cogburn, but it plays out the same way. They shoot one of the guys, and in both movies, they're both in the dugout and they're questioning them. Do you know where these guys are? Do you know where Ned Pepper is? Do you know where Tom Chaney is? And in both movies are like, no. And then they finally figure out that they're part of this gang, and they are waiting in both movies. They're there with horses waiting for Ned Pepper to show up, and Tom Chaney's probably with him, and they're waiting for that. And in the original, they have a plan where you have La Boeuf goes up on one side of the hills, Rooster Cogburn goes up on the other side with Mattie,
and they're gonna wait. La Boeuf is supposed to wait until Rooster starts the shooting, but he doesn't. And so in the remake, it's different, but it ends up being the same sort of outcome.
Yeah, it ends up. But what's really interesting is, so in the original, the guys come, and they have the triangulation, and shit goes down. They kill a few of the guys, and Tom Chaney is not with them, but lucky Ned Pepper is and escapes, even though they kill a bunch of guys. And then La Boeuf and Rooster Cogburn come down with Mattie, and they see who was killed. They realize, I know where these guys. Rooster Cogburn's like, I know where these guys are going.
Yeah.
But in the new version, in the Coen Brothers version, while they're waiting for them to show up, they see the guys coming in, and then La Boeuf shows up and faces down against these bad dudes, including.
But in both versions, it's La Boeuf's fault. The shooting started too soon.
Yes.
And so then they know that they're being chased, and they are able to get away.
They're able to get away.
So in both versions, it's a little different, but it ends up being La Boeuf's mistake.
Yes.
But also, what's different is the night before, as they're waiting for the gang to show up, in the original, that is when Mattie and Rooster are hanging out, and he tells her his backstory of how he was married and all that. He tells her that stuff in the remake as they're walking through the woods, following the gang.
And it's always better, like, as you learn when you're making movies, it's always better when characters are giving you exposition to not be sitting in place. It's always better. That's why Aaron Sorkin was the master of the walk and talk. Yeah, and it's always better. It just makes it more interesting. Otherwise, it's like, oh, we're in an exposition scene now.
Yeah.
And but either way, then the three of them go off. They know what direction to travel. But that's also, it's after that where La Boeuf, they meet up again, but he also leaves again.
Again, in the remake, he leaves again.
He leaves again, but not in the original. In the original, La Boeuf, John Wayne, and Mattie are together. Mm-hmm. And in the remake, La Boeuf, after the situation, they're together, and then La Boeuf takes off. They get in a big fight. Rooster Cogburn's drunk. I'm taking off. I don't need to put up with your bullshit, and leaves them. So once again, but that's a big difference.
And she has a moment where she's like, "Oh, I chose the wrong guy. I should have." Oh, is that at the end? Yeah, that's. Well, we're talking about the same scene.
Yeah, the same scene. I chose the wrong guy.
Chose the wrong guy. I'm gonna go with you. But he decides, like, he's messed up at this point. Like, his tongue is bit off, and he's been shot, and he just wants to go home. He's like done.
Yeah, so he takes off.
They're long gone. The gang is long gone. I'm out of here. And she's very sad because they've both given up on her.
Mm-hmm. But then she wakes up the next morning. Rooster Cogburn's still, like, sleeping, and she goes...
He's so drunk, he's, like, out of it.
Yeah, and in both movies, Mattie goes down to the water. In one version, she's by herself after leaving La Boeuf and Rooster Cogburn. And in the remake, she's by herself. There's only Rooster Cogburn who's asleep because he's drunk.
Yep.
And she goes to water to get, or she goes to the stream to get water, and in both movies, she runs across the man she's looking for, Tom Chaney.
Tom Chaney is there.
Tom Chaney is there.
Yep.
And in one film, it's Jeff Corey, a Star Trek alumnus, alumni, Star Trek alumni, and an alumnus, right?
Did
alumni.
you fill up my glass?
Would you like more?
I would.
And then the other, it's Josh Brolin.
Yeah.
And that's pretty great.
It is. Well, there you go.
So, and then all hell breaks loose. In both movies, they confront one another. Mattie has
well, he doesn't feel threatened because it's like a kid and he knows her.
Yeah, and he's like, what are you doing
you're
here?
Mattie Ross. Yeah, what are you doing in the forest? And that's when she's like, well, I'm here with the marshal and I'm here to...
I have 50 Rangers coming after you.
Yeah, and she's like, if you don't come with me, I'm going to shoot you. And he doesn't believe her, and he even helps her. He's like, you got to cock the gun. And he's like, pull it all the way back.
And it's her father's gun. It's her father's really powerful gun.
Really old gun. And she's like, I know, even though she doesn't. And he actually helps her shoot him. And he starts coming towards her like, no, it's the other way around. You're coming with me. And she shoots him. And he can't believe it.
In both movies. It's almost the same scene.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great scene. He's like, he can't believe it. He's like, I didn't think you would do it. And he's like, I was shot by a child. In both films.
And again, in the first movie, La Boeuf and Rooster Cogburn, and then Lucky Ned Pepper's gang comes down and confronts them, and captures Mattie.
Yeah.
And takes her, and takes Tom Chaney, and it's Ned Pepper, and in both movies it's the same situation.
Kind of, situation.
So she
yells out for help, and Rooster hears her in the remake, and then in the original, both Rooster and La Boeuf hear her.
Are there. Now, let me ask you this. With this situation, now that Mattie is for the first time in the movie really imperiled, captured by the bad guys, she shot the man she wanted to kill who doesn't die, who's still alive, who's part of this gang. How did you feel about the difference, that large difference in the film?
What do you mean difference?
Well, the fact that La Boeuf was with them in one, so you've got Rooster Cogburn and La Boeuf are in the original, but now it's just Rooster Cogburn, and now but the peril's the same, but there's one less person to help save Mattie.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about that change?
Well, in both films, he's shot, and La Boeuf is shot. And so he can't really do much at that point. So it didn't really matter that he wasn't there initially. He does show up after, which continues the story in the same way. So I don't think it didn't really bother me that at that point he was gone. I think it heightened your sense of like, wow, this girl is not going to get justice. Nobody's helping her now. She's on her own. And so I kind of appreciated that. They kind of had him leave the picture for a bit.
Yeah, it increases the peril. It increases her.
It does.
So, but it's interesting. I mean, but both films are playing the same beats pretty faithfully, so it must be hewing close to the novel. I would imagine.
I would think
either
so.
way. I mean, I'm sure that the Coen Brothers made a decision because the way La Boeuf comes back into the story is almost the same in both movies, and you realize it really doesn't matter. He's out there in the wilderness anyway.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter.
So Rooster Cogburn makes a deal in both movies. Like, I'll let you guys go. I'll give you a head start. You've got time to deal as long as you will let her go at some point. So it's the same kind of deal. So what's great is in both movies, Mattie is left with Tom Chaney, the man she wants to kill.
That's right.
She's left alone with him.
She knows, like, if you leave me with this guy, he's going to kill me.
Right, he's going to kill me.
And Ned Pepper's like, no, don't worry. And then he says to the guy...
In both movies, he says, if you touch her, you won't get your money.
You won't get your money.
You won't get your money. But it's still pretty interesting.
It is.
It's... And
Because you feel like, oh my God, how could you leave her with? I mean, he's a thug, so he doesn't care.
Right. He's a thug, so that's true. And so Mattie is now left with Tom Chaney.
Yeah.
And things escalate between them, and
yes,
there's a pit in one movie. In the original, Tom Chaney says there's a pit with a ton of rattlesnakes,
in there.
And in the other movie, it's 150 feet deep. It's a much deeper.
He doesn't mention the snakes.
Doesn't mention the snakes. It's just a deeper pit, and there's a big altercation.
Yeah, he comes at her. He wants to silence her.
He's going to silence her.
And in the original, he throws her into the pit, right? Or she shoots him and then he throws her into the pit. Or she stumbles.
She stumbles.
Or is that the remake? She stumbles into the pit. No, I don't remember.
No, I think she stumbles in the pit. Yeah, it's
in the original, he throws her into the pit, and in the remake, she stumbles into the pit. I think that's how it is.
It's true, but then either way, La Boeuf shows up.
He does. In the original, he was already there, so
But to rescue her, because they're in
I don't remember.
Okay, no. Chaney tries to knife Mattie,
right?
But La Boeuf appears and knocks Chaney out. And
wait, which version are you referring to?
This is the remake.
Yeah, right. He shows up. No.
Yeah, knocks Chaney out.
He tries to kill her, and she falls into the pit.
No, that doesn't happen yet. We're not there yet, because we're getting up to. We're at the place where Chaney's knocked out in both versions. All right, Chaney's knocked out in both versions. La Boeuf has knocked him out in both versions. Now we're at the place where one of the most famous scenes in Western history happens.
You're right.
Where La Boeuf and Mattie are looking over
They're looking into
this
the valley.
open field where there's a valley, and Ned's men.
Yes, 5 of them, or is it
4?
4 of them against
Rooster Cogburn. 4 against 1 on horseback.
Yeah.
And it's a showdown.
It's a showdown.
It's a showdown.
One against 4.
1 against 4, and in the movie, in both movies, it's almost exactly the same. And one of my favorite lines of dialogue in any movie happens during this scene. And that's when Rooster Cogburn says to the 4 of them, like, you really gonna do this? Really gonna happen? And Rooster Cogburn
said... First he says, step away. He says, step away to the other guys because he wants Ned. And they're like,
yeah. He says, you guys leave. You don't need to have all 4 of you here. You guys can walk away. Ned, you're going to be dead.
Yeah.
Ned's going to be dead. You guys can leave.
And they're like, yeah, right.
Nope. We're going to stick with our comrade. And then Rooster Cogburn says my favorite line.
Yeah, your favorite line.
Which is, fill your hands, you son of a bitch. And that means, of course, fill your hands with guns or lead or whatever the hell you're going to fill your hands with. And they charge at each other.
They do.
And it's a great scene. And of course, when you're riding on a horse at full tilt, it doesn't matter how good of a marksman you are. You're going like this. It's incredibly difficult to hit somebody.
Not only that, Rooster Cogburn gets out 2 guns and he's got the reins in his mouth.
I mean, it's so good. And there's the big, they travel each other.
Yeah. Yep.
And then of course, they turn around and 2 of the guys get killed.
Yeah.
And then a 3rd gets killed, and Rooster actually goes and his horse is shot. And the horse falls over with Rooster on it, traps Rooster.
And Ned is all shot up too.
Ned is all shot up, and it's great. And in the original, Ned is why am I drawing a blank? Haven't we not said this? Ned is Robert Duvall.
That's right, Robert Duvall.
Ned is Robert Duvall. We haven't said who Ned is, and Ned is Barry Pepper in the remake. And so the
funny, his name is Pepper.
What do you mean?
You said Barry Pepper, and it's Ned Pepper.
Well, maybe that's why they cast him.
Maybe.
You never know. So you got Robert Duvall in one and Barry Pepper in the other, and the scene is almost exactly the same. So Rooster Cogbur's on the ground, and Ned Pepper's coming up, and Ned Pepper says, "I've been shot up." Like, what does he say?
Yeah, I'm shot full of holes.
I'm shot full of holes.
Or I'm falling to pieces. I'm shot to pieces.
I'm shot to pieces. That's what. And they both say the same line. I'm shot to pieces, and you realize that
he's gonna kill Rooster.
He's gonna kill Rooster.
Rooster's pinned under his horse.
And then, of course,
La Boeuf is up on the ridge, and he it's far, so he doesn't know if he can do it, but he shoots, and luckily he hits Ned.
Yeah, and it's great.
Yeah.
And in the remake, the Coen Brothers do it from a distance, and you see him fall.
You just see him fall off the horse.
It's really good.
Yeah. And then at that point, he's
cracked over the head. He's cracked over the head by
what is his name? Tom Clancy.
No. Yeah. Not Tom Clancy. Tom Chaney. Tom Clancy wrote Hunt for Red October and Red Storm Rising.
I was saying it. I was like, wait.
Tom, you want some water?
Chaney.
So, no, Tom Chaney clocks La Boeuf over the head in both movies, knocks him out. And then there's the final confrontation between Mattie Ross and him.
Yes.
And in both films, eventually, Mattie and Tom Chaney ends up in the pit. Tom Chaney's dead.
Tom Chaney ends up dead in both films.
She kills him both times.
Yeah, and she ends up in the pit.
And she ends up in the pit, and in the original, there's rattlesnakes, and she breaks her arm.
She breaks her arm, yeah.
And in the other, she's going to fall 100 feet.
She falls in, and she gets caught by her boot laces on a twig or whatever.
But there are still rattlesnakes.
There's a skeleton with rattlesnakes. And in the remake, it's really scary because she sees a knife on the skeleton, and she pulls the skeleton towards her and rips open the shirt, and in there is a nest of rattlesnakes. Not just one, like there's a whole nest of them.
And she gets bitten in both films.
She does.
And Rooster Cogburn has to rescue her.
Yeah.
And she's dying of a snake bite.
Yeah, and he has to take her to the doctor right away, and in both films he has to leave La Boeuf behind, and she's upset by that. Or in the original, she's upset because she doesn't want to overstress her horse, and in the remake she's upset because they're leaving La Boeuf behind.
Right. But anyway, they race back. Little Blackie dies.
Little Blackie.
He dies in the original, and then in the remake,
he has to shoot him.
Rooster Cogburn shoots him. But he gets her back. He gets her to the doctors.
Yes.
And her life is saved. But here's where the movies diverge.
Yes.
The endings in both are very different.
Very different.
In the original, Mattie and Rooster Cogburn are back at her house.
Yes.
Her homestead, and they're looking at her father's grave. Mm-hmm. And they talk about the future, and Rooster Cogburn, I'd love to have you buried here because you have no family. And you can be here, and he doesn't want to be, and and then he rides off and leaves her alone.
Yeah.
But in the Coen Brothers movie, which is very different, after Rooster Cogburn drops her off, and he leaves.
He leaves.
And she doesn't see him again, and it cuts to 25 years later.
25 years later.
And it's in the future.
And she explains how she survived, but she had to have her arm amputated.
Because of gangrene, because of the bite.
Yeah, and that she never saw him again until she got an invitation, because he was...
to Cole Younger and Jesse James' Wild West show.
That's right.
So she goes to that Wild West show looking for Rooster Cogburn.
Yeah.
And you see very old Cole Younger and very old Jesse James. And she actually insults Jesse James.
She does.
She totally insults him.
She does.
And you see her, and she's kind of an old one-armed spinster.
Yeah, she never got married. I don't know why they wrote her like that.
And she wonders where La Boeuf is, and I wish I could see him again.
She would love to see him again.
And she takes Rooster Cogburn's body home and buries him in
the family plot.
I guess they just didn't want to deal with the sequel to True Grit, which is of course Rooster Cogburn, that was made in the mid-70s with Katharine Hepburn. So they probably weren't going to make the sequel to True Grit, Rooster Cogburn. So
they still could. They could sandwich it in there.
Yeah, they could. Well, then you'd have to retcon the fact that she never saw him again. I guess she doesn't have to see him again, because in Rooster Cogburn she doesn't really have to
Does she see him again? In
No, I don't think so.
Oh, see, it doesn't matter.
So, yeah, so I guess it would be, you wouldn't have to retcon it. It was just another adventure.
Yep.
So, okay, so that's it.
So that's it.
That's not a very good, I don't think we did a good job relating the story, but
It was hard trying to remember the plot.
yeah,
of
I was
each,
trying to do
and-
both at the same time because you're thinking about
yeah,
what's going on.
You're trying to remember both films at the same
well,
time.
so let me ask you this: would you consider this movie, having seen the other westerns that
Yeah.
we've watched, would you consider this a classic western?
You know, this was very different than the other westerns we watched.
Why do you say that?
I mean, this had more of a story, I think. More of a...
Well, they all have pretty big stories.
It's true. I don't know. It felt different to me.
Well, I think it feels different because the protagonist is a young girl.
A young girl.
I mean, in movies like The Searchers, they're looking for the young girl.
Yeah.
But in this movie, you're really seeing it from her perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have those
Yeah,
classic
it kind
Western
of,
tropes.
Yes, it broadens your idea of what the West was because it includes now this child, this girl who goes on an adventure for
Yeah.
revenge. Like, it's the same tropes as other Westerns, but it's with a girl, a teenage girl.
And this is really her coming of age story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in a way, if you were to classify this movie, yes, it's considered a Western, but it really is a coming of age, a young girl's coming of age
Yeah.
story. And you know, it's like the journey of Natty Gann. You ever see that movie?
Ooh, that sounds familiar.
The journey. I think Meredith Salinger stars in that. I haven't seen that in so
I'm not
long.
sure if I've seen it.
The journey of Natty Gann. But or any one of those, you know, female coming of age stories
Yeah.
that's what this movie is. So I when I think about it, like watching it now, I'm like, this is a very different movie from the Sergio Leone movie.
Very different.
It's very different from My Darling Clementine. It's very different from Silverado.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because the kids in those movies are more like props. They're more like
Yeah,
things
exactly.
people have. They represent innocence and all. But Mattie is not necessarily an innocent waif either.
No,
You know,
she's a very strong character.
She's a negotiator. She's really good at what she does.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have to say, the first time I saw, I had never seen the original until now. And I had seen this movie the remake when it came out. And when I saw it, I thought it was amazing. I mean, I was really blown away by it, and it was like a really dark film. But then going back and watching the original and seeing how light it wasn't so like heavy and dark. And then comparing them, watching them one right after the other, it's amazing how it felt so dark to me, yet it still stayed true to the way the original was told.
Right.
So it made me like feel different about it this time, watching it again after watching the original.
Well, like the imagery when they come across the strange like man wearing the bear suit.
Yeah.
And it's really a haunting image. The man, you know, hanging from. I mean, that was a very different. And if that was in the book, I think there's a tonal. I mean, it shows how tone can really play a part in how different these movies can be. And you know, I really like both of these movies.
Yeah.
I think they're great, and I do think though that the remake is very much a Coen Brothers film. Like it would have been if you had another director make this film, it would have been very different. This fits right into their oeuvre, and I can see why they wanted to remake this movie.
Yeah, I love their films. I think they did a great job with this one too.
Yeah, it's really great. But like, okay, so as a summation, with our journey through these movies, now that we watched these Western films, how do you feel about the Western as a genre? Do you think that I mean, obviously there's 100 million other Westerns we haven't watched. I mean, I can think of, off the top of my head, Rio Bravo, High Noon, The Searchers, Stagecoach, Red River.
Yeah. Well, you know, we'll have to do maybe in a year another Western.
And then there's all the Clint Eastwood movies, High Plains Drifter and Outlaw Josie Wales, and there's a million different. And then there's Tombstone and Young Guns that people want to go to.
So many.
There's a million. There's 300 westerns, 400 westerns. There's the Bud Boddicker westerns that I actually have, who's a director. There's so many westerns to look at.
Look, I grew up loving westerns, probably because it was so different than what I came from. My parents are European.
Right.
It's like the complete opposite of what the West, I'm first generation American in my family. So I was fascinated by the West. And so watching westerns whenever they were on TV, I would watch them. I loved them. I thought they were fascinating. And like I said, I got the Time Life books. I just was fascinated by it all. And so even these past 2 weeks, watching westerns has been really fun for me. I've really enjoyed it.
No, me too. I mean, and watching, we watched westerns from 1946 to 2010.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty wide spread of
It is.
westerns. So that's what, 64 years of westerns?
Yeah.
64 years of Americana and also 64 years of Hollywood history.
Yeah.
And you're looking at what's interesting about to me the modern era, like Silverado westerns had sort of, other than Clint Eastwood making westerns, and then of course now we've got like Yellowstone, the series with Kevin Costner, is kind of a modern western. But
have we watched that? We haven't watched that.
No, we haven't watched it. But if you look at his movies like Dances with Wolves and Open Range, he's gone back and he's done. But I wonder, are westerns played out? Is it possible to make a western now? Because we went through the point where the western genre sort of fell from favor.
Yeah, I mean they were a huge thing back in the 70s and the 60s and 70s.
Oh, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. I mean they were
king like for so long.
Oh yeah, no, they were. But they were so, until you started deconstructing the westerns with the Leone movies and Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, and then stuff like Butch Cassidy and McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and then the Clint Eastwood Outlaw Josie Wales and High Plains Drifter and all that. I mean, I wonder, I just don't know if...
I think you can continue making westerns. Just like any other period piece. Like, I don't see why it would be... I don't think that because there were so many made about that you couldn't continue making good Western
Well, it's not that you couldn't make them. It's, will people watch them? The real question that I have is, in our culture now, like, could you imagine your daughters, you have a 20-year-old daughter and a 17-year-old daughter, are they going to sit down and watch a classic Western and get anything out of it?
Look, I think they would watch anything that has a really good story.
Yes, but would they want to deal with the Old West?
I mean, you could tell a story in any time period if it's a really good story.
I know, but now we live in a world that like when I was a kid, like when you were a kid, because we would watch anything that would show up on TV.
Right.
We didn't have choices where if it didn't tickle our fancy in 5 minutes, we're like,
Yeah, no.
I'm out.
We didn't.
I mean, now
we had 3 other choices, maybe.
Right, and then when you had a videotape, if you'd rent a tape from the video store, you're like, I'm not going to take it back without watching this shit.
Yeah, gotta watch it.
So I'm going to sit down, even if I'm bored for 25 minutes, I'm going to still watch it just to see what happens.
Except for Flesh and Blood, which I was not allowed to watch.
Well, yes, we got to watch it from WINEning About Movies, which is why this show exists. But that's the thing that fascinates me is I'm constantly fascinated by, even in, look, I know for the LA horror filmmaker community that you've met, there are people that I know that I respect that are much younger than me that are like, I won't watch Hammer horror movies from the 60s or 70s. They have nothing to... because because their attention span is... No, it's not even their attention span. It's that like they grew up... They go back as far as Halloween or maybe Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
But if somebody were to remake a Western, which Tarantino has... and they're very interesting, and people watch them. It all depends on how you're going to make the film.
Yes, but Tarantino is remaking things with a very modern sensibility.
Okay.
But yes, I mean,
they're still westerns.
Whether it's The Hateful Eight, which is an overt western, or Django Unchained, or something.
Those are westerns.
They are westerns, but they're also a pastiche of multiple genres.
It doesn't matter. They are western stories. They are set in the West. During that time period, and they're very interesting, and people watch them. So you have to make them in that way, where they're very interesting stories,
right? But
that people of today would watch.
But I say that they're not archetypical Western stories. They're adding in. It's like okay, you can take.
Yeah, but you could apply what you're saying to any genre.
No, it's true. It's true. But what the point that I'm trying to make is the time period, the where our culture is, makes certain, like, I don't think you could make certain kinds, the way things are made, unless you modernize them and infuse them with all kinds of like what Tarantino does.
You wouldn't want to make an old-fashioned Western. If you're going to make a Western today, you're going to make it to the standards of what we're watching today.
Right, but what I mean is the characters act and do things that are of today, as opposed to being, say, period accurate.
Like, were they period accurate when they were making them in the 70s?
If you think about it, they were more period accurate because they were 50 years closer to the actual Old West than we are now. Like, as we move away, it's like when, look.
Yeah, but we still make movies about things that are even older than.
No, of course. But now look at things like Downton Abbey. On one hand, it's period accurate, and yet on the other hand, the storytelling sensibilities are very.
You haven't watched Downton Abbey, so you can't say that. You could say that about something else.
Or Bridgerton.
Bridgerton is not period accurate.
I know, but Bridgerton is trying to make some kind of historical statement.
But I still watched it. I thought it was fun.
Of course.
It's a good story.
Of course, but what my point is that these classical tales...
Or better yet, The Great.
I love Gladiator. But Gladiator, while it has a lot of verisimilitude, like the Battle of Germania and all that, I don't know how period accurate any of its stuff is.
But you watched it and
I loved it. I loved it, but I wouldn't say that it captures the thing about the sword and sandal films is that they definitely were a genre that fell out of favor. That they were made a lot for a period of time, and then they weren't. And Gladiator was an attempt to bring back basically a moribund, a dead genre, and they did. And then in the wake of Gladiator, there was everything from Troy to Kingdom of Heaven to even Clash of the Titans, which is 300. They tried to make all of these movies, and 300 was based on a comic book, so it was all very stylized and of today. But to go back and do a real period sword and sandal epic, you had to update it. And I fucking love Gladiator.
Well, of course you're going to update whatever you're.
But Gladiator might as well be a science fiction movie. If you played that exact same movie,
you're arguing against yourself
in space. No, but I know. But that's what my point is. I'm not arguing. It's a question I ponder. It's a question I ponder.
You could totally make a Western today. I'm all for it. I will watch it. I love whatever Westerns
are.
I
think they do. I mean, Hell on Wheels.
Hell on Wheels, the first 2 seasons were so good until they killed the main character.
But
it totally jumped the shark, and then nobody watched
it.
But
what was interesting about Hell on Wheels...
It was so good.
Been telling the story of the railroads and all that.
So good.
That was something that hadn't been done. You go back and you watch something like Peaky Blinders, which is set in the 20s.
Totally
I
awesome.
love Peaky Blinders, but I'm just saying, it's all...
People love period pieces. And if you're going to make it with the that will appeal to modern day audiences, like you have to do that to get them to watch.
I'm opening this bottle of wine.
No.
Yep, it's already open. There we go. We said two fisting. By the way, we haven't even read letters yet.
You said two fisting.
Yeah, fill your hands, you son of a bitch. Wine. I'm filling my hands, my son of a bitch. By the way, my leg hurts. My foot hurts so much that I'm like...
Because you haven't put it up at all today.
I've been walking around.
You didn't even let me wrap it.
I know, and it hurts. So, you know why? Ugh. By the way, this is a Pinot Noir. This is a Pinot Envy. We've had this before.
Yeah?
Yes. Pinot Envy. Get it?
Pinot Envy.
Pinot Envy. I'm mixing this up.
Don't mix wine.
I don't even care. It's a Pinot Noir.
Oh, I can't even.
I know, it's terrible.
Oh my God. You had that much, you could have finished it and then poured yourself.
Now it's a Pinot blend. Terrible, right? I know. So much for our whining about movies. Or you can whine about movies. Now we have letters.
Okay.
Okay. So, the first letter comes from Nick. My name's Nick, and a while back I stumbled across a movie I'd never heard of. It completely blew me away, and so ever since I've been desperately trying to convince everyone across movie fandom to give it a shot and hopefully drag it out of complete obscurity. The movie's called The Beast of War, a.k.a. The Beast, directed by Kevin Reynolds, right? From 1988. Oh, directed by Kevin Reynolds, starring George Zunza, Jason Patric, and Stephen Bauer. George Zunza from Basic Instinct. It was only released in 2 screens across the whole U.S. by Columbia Pictures, and I kid you not when I say this is the best Hollywood film you've never heard of. I've heard of it. I want to say that I saw it on either TV or I rented it. Quentin Tarantino's old writing partner Roger Avery has it down as the best movie of 1988 on Letterboxd, and he also has it down as one of his 20 desert island films, with Apocalypse Now being the only other war film. The film has a 7.3 on IMDb, 3.5 on Letterboxd, but not a single critic's review on Rotten Tomatoes, but it does have an audience score of 85%. Ooh. I'm starting to get more and more podcasts to check it out, review it, while Letterboxd reviews seem to be on the increase now. I think it would be great if companies like Criterion or Shout Factory could get their hands on it and give it the exposure it clearly needs. You know, Kevin Reynolds is a filmmaker that I've always respected. I mean, Rapa Nui.
Do you have the movie?
I don't have The Beast.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. It's a tank movie. It's a tank battle movie, kind of like Fury, but it's different. I think it would be great if companies like Criterion or Shout Factory could get their hands on it and give it the exposure it clearly needs. Please seek this film out. It's available on DVD and streaming, so it won't be difficult to track down. And if you do see it, let me know if you agree with me that it might be one of the 10 best American movies of the 80s. I wouldn't go that far, but it's good. One way or another, we need to find a way to raise this movie's profile and prevent it from continual obscurity once and for all. You know, there's other movies I know of quite well that are pretty obscure. Just saying. All the best, Nick. Well, Nick, thanks for writing in. If anybody hasn't seen The Beast, I agree with Nick. Seek it out. Find it, because it is quite a good film.
It's a war film?
It is a war film. Tom Jr. Jackson writes in. Howdy, Rob and Ace. I thought I'd write to you both about a little movie that I'd never heard of and I'd never seen. And I'm sure just like me, Ace is probably wondering how many man copies of it do you have. I don't know if this counts as a Western, but I will fancy my chances with it. It's a little film from 1979. I was 4 years old, and it was the year my little brother was born. It's a film starring Jane Fonda and Robert Redford called The Electric Horseman. I saw that in the theater. My mom took me. It was released through Universal Studios and Columbia Pictures and was directed by the late, great Sidney Pollack. By the way, on cable, early on, we got it. This movie aired it's like it never went off cable.
I don't remember.
I probably saw this movie 1,000 times. Redford plays a former champion rodeo rider who, after some years...
I have to say, Redford...
Who doesn't love... Every girl loves Robert Redford. You should. I love Robert Redford. Robert Redford plays a former champion rodeo rider who, after some years, has been reduced to use his riding skills to hawk a breakfast cereal in a gaudy Las Vegas show. Jane Fonda plays a reporter who shows up in Las Vegas and decides to interview Redford's character and ask him how he feels about having to hawk a breakfast cereal after a 5-time all-around world champion rodeo rider. After being a 5-time all-around. So while rehearsing for a show, he finds out that the $12 million horse that they want him to use is stoned. So he'll remain docile and doesn't go crazy. So on the night of the show, he decides to flee into the desert as an act of defiance with the horse, and that's when all hell breaks loose. Now, co-starring in the film are some pretty big names. Willie Nelson and Valerie Miss Tessmacher-Perrine. John Saxon round out the cast, and a small appearance by Mr. Diabetes Wilfred Brimley. Why does everyone say that about him? I never thought about it. I know he was in those ads. As I've said, I've never heard or seen of this film. Really? It's a pretty original concept. Rodeo rider steals a horse. Reporter chases after rodeo rider because she thinks there's a story there. The big corporation that owns the horse has got all kinds of law enforcement looking for Redford, Fonda, and the horse. Sidney Pollack directs a great film of finding one's self-respect, doing the right thing, and just good old-fashioned chase film. The wide shots of the desert in this film are breathtaking. The dynamic interaction between Fonda and Redford is great, and this film just makes you want to go out in the desert with a horse with the horse with no name, and explore it for the view. This film was released on December 21st, 1979, 3 days before my 4th birthday. Bro, are you born on Christmas Eve? That's a bummer. Do you get double presents? That is probably why I've never heard of it. Roger Ebert once said that they don't make films like this anymore, and at one point it could have starred Tracy and Hepburn. That is true. It has all the makings of an oddball romance western chase film. Robert Redford not only did his own horse riding in the film, but after filming, he bought the horse, which lived for the next 18 years till it passed. The Electric Horseman was the on-screen debut of Willie Nelson's acting career, and he sang 5 songs for the film. He appeared 2 years later in Michael Mann's Thief. The film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Sound Editing, but lost to Apocalypse Now. Of course it did, and rightfully so. The film is based on an actual event where the Sonny and Cher show invited the owner of a Triple Crown winner, Secretariat, and the horse on the show, and since she knew that the horse wasn't going to know what a TV show was, declined to be on it.
Wow.
One last bit of trivia about this film, because I get passionate about facts and trivia, and I do my homework, or Columbo-like research, so I know that I can get things right. And what I'm talking about, this is not the first time that Redford and Fonda had acted together on screen. They first starred together in a film called The Chase back in 1966, and then the following year starred in a big screen version of one of my favorite Neil Simon plays, Barefoot in the Park. Well, Rob and Ace, or Ace and Rob, it has been great telling you about this film, and maybe one of these days you'll check it out. So until the next time, I hitch my horse to the post. Happy trails to you until my next email. Tom Jr. Jackson. Well, Tom Jr. Jackson, thank you so much.
That's cool.
You would love the Electric Horseman.
Well, first of all, I love both Robert Redford and I love Jane Fonda, so I think I would really like that film.
Me too. Me too. Let's see what you guys have to say. Who is here? Chloe. Chloe sends in a tip and says, at the time when John Wayne made a guest appearance on the TV show The Beverly Hillbillies, the producers then asked him what he would like to be paid. He just simply replied with a 5th of bourbon.
Oh my God.
I'm telling you, John Wayne was the man.
So he was a drunkard off the set too.
No, he just liked to drink. There's a difference between being a drunkard and enjoying drinking.
I'm sure drunkards enjoy drinking.
Do they?
Go ahead, tell yourself that.
Julius. Julius is here. Where have you been, Julius? How are you, sir? Tell Julius we still got Pinchy. You liked it so much.
Yes. So Rob ordered me a couple more bottles of the Pinchy wine, and I still have one. I'm hiding it.
Yeah, I gave it to you to hide.
I'm hiding it. It's for me.
I know it's for you. But it's because Julius was the man who brought us the joy into our life where we discovered this wine.
And then you drank one bottle to yourself, so it made me upset. So
but then I bought you more.
You bought me 2 more bottles, and I've already had one, which I don't share with anyone, and I still have one left.
Because of Julius.
Because of Julius.
The official sommelier of the Burnettwork. So if it wasn't for Julius, we wouldn't have discovered Knocking Point Wines. He would not have. He enrolled us in the wine club, and we found this Pinchy wine that, for whatever reason, you loved it.
I do. I love it.
And being a French girl, I mean, the fact that you like a wine, that's a big deal.
It is.
That's a big vote of confidence. We should make a video for them and just about their Pinchy wine, just a testimonial, and say
I love the wine.
Because of Julius Goodwin, the official sommelier who got us involved in your wine club, she found one of her favorite wines that she can't get enough of, that she hoards it now. She doesn't even give it to me.
I don't want anyone to have my Pinchy wine. Although I have to say, this week I subscribed to a wine club because we run out of wine because we're doing these shows 3 days a week. And so I was getting it through Thrive Market.
We still get Julius's wine by the Knocking Point too.
We do. But it's still not enough. I mean, that's like what? How many bottles of wine do we go through in a month?
Well, this is the 119th episode of this show.
We go through a lot of wine. So Thrive Market,
By the way, do you know next month is our year anniversary doing this show?
Next month?
Next month.
That's amazing.
March.
Anyway, I have subscribed to Wine Awesomeness.
But don't forget, Julia still has a subscribe.
I know, but that's only 6 bottles a month. We go through
No,
way
that's
more
that's only 2 bottles a month.
my club that I just signed up for is 6 bottles a month.
So now we have 8 bottles a month.
Right. That's still not quite enough.
No, because that only assumes we drink wine. I want to be like, as an old man,
Well,
I want to
we
be
go
like...
through 3 bottles a week on the show.
I want to be like Oliver Reed. Apparently, Oliver Reed would sit at a table and drink like 10 bottles of wine.
No.
And
no.
that he would never get up and he would just pee in the bottles of wine.
No, honey, that's
the empty
not,
bottles.
No, that's not what. No, we go through.
I don't really want to be
3
like
bottles
that.
a week on the show. I'm not talking about sitting down and drinking 6 bottles of wine
I
all
am.
at once.
I mean,
Oh my god. So 6 bottles would only be 2 weeks worth for the show.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah.
Timberlow, the Spider Monkey. Tim's here. I love the Coens' True Grit. I know what other movies of theirs I loved. Oh, you know what other movies of theirs I loved as well? One that might be good for February's WINEning. Oh, what's it called? Something Crossing. I don't remember. You know what? Since we don't have...
Well...
Or do we? Have we been
Well,
informed? Do we have a...
I don't know if this is official...
Well, we can make it. You know what? We don't have to wait for anybody to tell us.
But I was conversing with Richard to see what our film would be, and I don't know if this is official, but so far Miller's Crossing has the most requests.
Well, that's exactly.
But nobody has voted yet, so.
That's what Tim is talking about.
Yeah, I know.
So I say we make it official. February is viewer's choice on WINEning About Movies. And so Wednesday night, our first movie, we're going to go from one Coen Brothers movie into another. My favorite Coen Brothers movie.
Okay.
What's the rumpus? The rumpus is we're watching the Coen Brothers Miller's Crossing.
Oh, he's saying it's official.
It's official now. Miller's Crossing, is the first... is the viewer's choice movie.
I think people have been requesting this for a long time.
What's the rumpus? It's so good. We've been giving him the hi-hat for too long. You'll know what that means soon. It was giving me the hi-hat.
Okay, Miller's Crossing.
Miller's Crossing,
for
it
Wednesday.
is. So there you go, Tim. We're going to do Miller's Crossing on Wednesday. Rogue Thinker became a member of the channel. Well, thank you, Rogue Thinker. Let's drink to Rogue Thinker.
Yes, Rogue Thinker.
I love that, like a dinner bell. The Squish Show sends in a super chat and says, "Where's the La Boeuf or La Boeuf?"
Where's the beef?
Josiah Count or Josiah Count sends in a super chat and says, "A great modern western is Hell or High Water." We watched that. I love Hell or High Water. It's excellent. Jeff is in that as well. Have you seen that one? Oh, I own Hell and High Water. And you know what? That is a modern western.
Yeah.
But I would say that I think No Country for Old Men, another
Yes.
Coen Brothers movie, is also a modern western.
Yes.
But here's the thing. You know, we call them modern westerns, but can something modern... I mean, I guess that's a reinvention of the genre. Maybe I'm just too set in my ways.
You are. You need to let go, man.
Well, because thematically, Hell and High Water and No Country for Old Men are definitely westerns.
They are
They're
westerns.
just transposed into the modern
Exactly.
age. But the thing is, well...
No. Don't even try to box it in.
Okay, Missy, I won't. I go, okay. Tom Jr. Jackson sends in a tip and says 2 things. 1, The Electric Horseman is streaming on HBO Max. Well, there you go there. And 2, Elvis Presley almost played Glen Campbell's role in True Grit. Yes, he did.
Yes.
And was
I would've
nixed
loved
by his
that.
manager, and Karen Carpenter almost played Mattie, but didn't because she was unknown at the time. That is true. Elvis Presley wanted top billing. Top billing.
Yeah, but he deserved top billing.
Above John Wayne.
Come on, man. The king.
He is the king.
Come on.
He is the king. Mr. and Mrs. Yerke. I love that Mr. and Mrs. Yerke are always together. Hi, guys. We never saw Grit 1, but during the last 10 minutes of Grit 2, we could not stop crying. Giddy up, the Yerk Man.
Well, you need to watch the original, too. They are very similar but different.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely worth watching both.
That is true.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth watching both. Well, I guess, I mean, you know, we're way over time. I thought we'd have double, but since we're talking about the same movie, it's not like we had to start and stop. It's not like doing two different movies where you have to start and explain the plot all over again.
It's true. They were the same movie, slightly different, but basically the same thing.
Basically the same thing.
And both were done really well.
Both were done really well.
Yeah.
I mean, no, they were. But I mean, I'm still, as an aficionado of the genre, I'm always wondering about reinventing. Like the crime genre never changes. It never changes. The crime genre, there's always people committing crimes.
Yeah.
But I would say that the Western genre, part of, like when you're talking about a modern Western, yes, it takes place in the Southwest and like Hell or High Water. It does have Western themes, which Western themes go back even before the Western. But I do think that the Old West setting, which part of it, the push westward, the unclaimed lands.
But those are great stories. People want to hear those
I
stories.
know.
Like that show that recently. What was that show with all the women who?
Godless.
So good.
Godless was based on a true story.
There you go.
That's Scott Frank who
and
made.
That was just made a couple years ago.
Yeah, but that was based on an actual event.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah.
I love Godless.
Okay, so Western stories can still be told.
They can still be told.
Watch Godless; it's so good.
And if you liked, well, it has nothing to do with The Queen's Gambit, but it was made by Scott Frank, who wrote and directed The Queen's Gambit. He also wrote and directed Godless.
Plus, it's one of the actresses from Downton Abbey.
It is one of the actresses from Downton Abbey.
She's amazing.
She's amazing
in the show. It's so good.
It's true. It's.
What is that on Netflix?
It's on Netflix.
Godless.
And you'd think more people would be watching it now because of Scott Frank.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, we're way over time. I mean, it's 9:21.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think, so all in all, did you learn anything from Western Week?
I learned that I still love Westerns.
Well, that's good. So we'll watch more.
And I was really inspired by the Leone films. I mean, I think they're pieces of art.
Well, we'll have to go watch more.
I want to watch more.
There's more. I've got the Man with No Name trilogy. I've got Fistful of Dollars and for $50
I have to see
more,
them all.
which were inspired by samurai movies. Which there's something else we should delve into.
I have not seen any samurai movies.
Well, there's a lot of great samurai movies. And
I would be into that.
Samurai. Do you know that they remade Unforgiven as a samurai movie?
Really?
Yep.
That sounds crazy.
No, it's the same story, but it's done with samurai. Because the first Man with No Name movie was based on Yojimbo, which was in itself based on a samurai movie. The Magnificent Seven, another great Western, was based on the Seven Samurai, which is who these people, these dudes right here, those dudes.
I can see the correlation. Yeah, totally. Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. Please continue making Westerns. I love them.
Which are great.
They are great.
All right, well then, I guess Western Weeks comes to a close.
It does. But we will revisit.
We will
at some point.
No, we will. We will revisit. We will revisit, and it's very exciting. So I guess let's talk about it on a scale of.
You want to change the camera?
Oh yeah, yes. Let's get back to us. So on our whining about movies bottoms up scale, what is our bottoms up scale?
Our bottoms up scale is 1 to 4 glasses because there are 4 glasses in a bottle.
4 glasses in a bottle,
so
and
Rob is having more than 4 glasses at the moment.
But I'm not. I'm going to give this bottle of you to take.
Okay.
So on a scale of 1 to 4 glasses of wine, what would you give the original True Grit?
I should have thought about this.
We've been talking about this.
I think they're great. I'm going to give them 4 glasses.
You're giving them both 4 glasses?
Both of them.
See, I'm going to tell you something.
Tell me.
I'm going to give both of these movies 3.5 glasses of wine.
Okay.
Because I do think that my favorite Westerns and my favorite movies, that to me at least, that get 4 glasses of wine, transcend their genres. And I like these movies a lot, but they don't take me to that level. And as far with judging these against other westerns like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, like Once Upon a Time in the West, like The Wild Bunch, like a lot of other movies, I think these are good movies, but I would not say that they're peak westerns for me.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
I'm going to give each one of them 3.5 stars.
I still stick to my 4 glasses.
All right, well, and that's good. We don't always have to agree.
No, we don't.
So cheers to that.
Cheers.
And to the end of Western Weeks, thanks for enjoying these reviews with us.
Miller's Crossing, you guys chose it.
You guys chose it, and all of February's viewers' choice. So
keep voting, because we need a whole month full of movies.
Yeah, that we're gonna watch. I mean, we don't know.
Go on the Facebook page. Oh, and also Richard says that there is going to be a watch party on Tuesday, and you can dress up if you want to.
As a 30s gangster?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Yep.
Well, there you go. Well, here's to you guys for watching. I want to thank our moderating staff, Mike Bodden, the Richard, of course. I want to thank everybody, all of our moderators, Bunyan Snipe, Tom Pariso, Joshua Levesque. I don't know if he's here. And, you know, we have such great moderators.
So great.
Greg Smith. They make the channel what it is, so thank you to the moderators. I want to thank you to all of you who support the channel via Super Chats and tips. Thank you so much. Thank you for sending us letters. If you want to send us letters, please do so at the Burnettwork.net website. There's a lot going on there. There's 3-word reviews. There's all kinds of stuff happening. And we've been doing, for those of you who are members of the channel, we did a Let's Get Physical Media after-party chat where we just get on and you were answering just questions from people. No tips, none of that. You already support the channel. So that for members who are members can come and join in. We haven't done one for whining about movies, but we will do a few over the month of February. And you can ask Elizabeth all the pressing personal questions you've always wondered about.
Yes, you can.
And you hear me talk enough, so I mean, I might I'll just sit here and nod, and I'll just be and maybe the ace will be the arbiter of not just cinematic excellence, but, well, she'll be the arbiter of excellence of lifestyle. You can ask whatever you want. I'll be here and moderate live. So there you go. So
I think it'd be hard for you not to
chime in.
Yeah.
It's hard because I feel like if I'm not talking all the time, somebody's missing out. Like I'm not entertaining.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Laugh all you want. Laugh all you want, fuzzball. Laugh all you want. All right. So I guess take us out.
Well, okay. So, everyone you meet has this story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen.
And with that,
have a better night.
Have a better night. Thanks for being here, everyone.
See you Wednesday.
I'll be back tomorrow on the John Campea Show and on Robservations, the show about something. Robservations, episode number 611. Didn't we just do 600?
Yes.
My God. Have a good night, everybody.